Good evening. This is John Warren, publisher of the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint newspaper, coming to you with our program from the desk of the editor. We are in the last week of Black History Month, and we are so happy to say that as we are moving through our 66th year as the African American publication for San Diego County, we are among some 200 black papers in America now celebrating our 199th year. And so this evening we have an open mic scenario because there's so much going on. We had the State of the Union yesterday. We have issues in terms of the president. We have some local issues happening in terms of things that are taking place. And there's a budget that's forthcoming for the city. And, you know, it would be good if you have thoughts or concerns to speak up early so that we can get those things in before the right people and not wait till the last minute. So we continue to serve all 17 cities, 89 zip codes, unincorporated areas of San Diego County as an adjudicated legal publication. We're online. You can find us at sdvoice.info. We are in our libraries in the communities. We are with our senior centers, and so we're just trying to be as many places in our churches with papers that go to churches over 1,000 each week to all a number of churches in the community. So we're excited. It's been a great month, and I got an important editorial this week that talks about the crisis of Black history and what we're going to do in terms of how we influence continuing to make it. Dr. Thompson.
Well, happy Black History Month to everybody. And one thing about it, Black history is every day because we continue to make history each and every day. Want to encourage everybody to make sure that we keep the legacy alive by continuing to share the great things that are happening in our communities and around the world. You know, one of the greatest things about it, Dr. Warren, is to be able to tune in every week to the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint and literally get a history lesson as we spend time going through what is being shared with us, not only locally, but nationally and worldwide. And so we're very, very excited to continue this legacy. This is, and I want to say to people that how we are going to continue to be able to grow and to thrive is to continue to build partnerships and connections and networks that we network together. This is visible by the network and the partnership that we have with the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint and GOD Radio. And we continue those efforts to bring more and more people to the fold, California Black Media and the other newspapers that are around the nation that we are consistently supporting and putting the word out there for. One of the key things is simply this. You know, what they say is a poor dog that won't wag his own tail. You know what I'm saying? And I think that it's so important that we as African Americans have to learn how to celebrate one another.
Yes.
And begin to wag our own tail. Because there's so many other people that was like, wow, that's happening. Wow, that's happening. But then even in your own city, we don't value it at the level that we can. And so I get excited when I look at the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint. I get excited when I see Black San Diego. I get excited when I see different organizations doing things. But you know what makes me more excited is when we connect together and we celebrate and we support one another. So I just want to encourage people, you know, just like the Black Chamber, you know, they bought a building. They're taking over a building right there at the Four Corners of Life. You know, that's big. You know what I'm saying? But we look at how much property do we own or we don't own in our own communities and even in our 9 blocks. How do we get more ownership in those areas before people let developers and everybody else sneak in and grab it, and we don't even know what's happening?
But Dr. Thompson, while that's so good in terms of people buying property, my concern today is that those who do not always seek to stay connected to the community.
Yep.
They don't stay connected to the paper or to GOD and to the churches and those of us who have made it possible for them to be able to come in and do what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I mean, that building there is so significant. The Legal Aid Society is remnant of the legal services that was created back in the 60s under the Great Society that Lyndon Johnson implemented in an effort to fulfill the dreams of John Kennedy.
Hmm.
And it was a phenomenal move because even when you see a law and order story and you hear them Mirandizing a person, you have the right to, that grew out of legal aid.
Hmm.
That came out of Arizona. They came out of establishing that people had rights and they weren't being given. So we can't wait till we have a crisis. We just need to connect with each other.
Well, since you're talking about legal aid, do we know, has legal aid closed down? Did they move? What's going on?
Oh,
and
it's
why?
been closed. The business
Okay.
is closed, boarded up, doesn't open. They're gone, and it always had kind of a security thing with the roll up the doors and the guard there, always doing business hours
Mhm.
out front. The only question is, what is the chamber going to do with it? You know, when we first created, Jerry and I created the Black Chamber. We rented space next door to the Voice and Viewpoint at 1729 Euclid,
Hmm.
two doors from Wrigley's Market.
Hmm.
And the paper paid the rent for the chamber to have an office space.
Hmm.
And we put the furniture in there and we supported it. So it wasn't about someone giving us a grant or coming to money. We financed that office and we had a place for people to meet in the community that were businesses.
Hmm.
We charged them $75 a year to belong, and we gave them support. If they needed to establish their business, I helped them determine, is it a partnership, limited corporation, LLC? You got a grant that you want to go after or a request for a proposal, help them write the bids, did all of that kind of legwork and never charged a dime for any of it because we were all there helping each other.
Hmm.
And so I don't know if this chamber, so far it didn't have a track record of doing anything in the community.
Well,
And we can't let them ride on the fact that they got authority to handle the BID because the BID hasn't really done anything in the community since the days of Huffman, who started the Merchant Association that then became the BID.
yeah, and one of the things about it, and I always say that, there are things that are happening in our community that we either see or we don't see. I have known some people to go through and work with the chamber and have actually had excellent support and excellent opportunities, but it doesn't seem like it is as much as we should see. You know what I'm saying? I think that even with how we go about things, I think a lot of times we offer a lot of services, but it's up to people to want to take advantage of the services. And like I give you an example, the job opportunities that are given. You know what I'm saying? Like, say for instance, we do an event, and we say, okay, you know what? We know who are the best sound people, the best photographers, the best this, but no, we're going to give it, and we're going to go hire a person from the community. We're going to go hire a person that we see and growing up, and they're trying to establish their business. And it might not be perfect, but we're giving them a shot. But what we're looking at is the attitude that they come with when we give them a shot. Dr. Warren, I'm going to say this because my first big production was with the Voice and Viewpoint and the Black Chamber with Gold Coast Classic when we were down at the Civic Center.
Yeah.
I never produced in that big of a house.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
God's property and all of it.
Bobby
Yeah.
Jones and the whole 9 yards. Now, it wasn't perfect, but yet the attitude of working together brought us back years. So a lot of things happen to come about, and this is like for black folks, that we have to realize that attitude and focus on being excellent will take you much further than the money.
Well, Jesse Jackson used to say your attitude will affect your altitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so how high you go based on how you act.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think back, as you mentioned, we always sought out blacks. When we first started doing Gold Coast, there was no black security company. I forget the name of the one that's they're still here, maybe in business, but they were in business, but the only business they got was as a subcontractor with the white security firms in town. And when we took Gold Coast and we took the contract for the stadium, we hired them as our general and let them subcontract people that they needed to. So we always gave that opportunity first to our people. And it doesn't always work out as it can, but we keep trying.
Yeah.
Okay? And my concern in 2026, I'm not going to be as nice as I've been about not calling out people who are not doing what they could do to help, because everybody who's successful and black is standing on the shoulders of somebody black, even in this town, in our lifetime, that paved the way for them to be able to stand or sit where they are. And I'm not going to let them just get away with acting like they got there on their own.
Well, one of the things about it, and I want to go back to when the Super Bowl came, and they wanted to have a black caterer to do black barbecue, and they literally could not find any black caterer or enough black caterers to come together to produce the food
I was
to
going
make
to
this
add
money.
that note. Not only they couldn't find any, they couldn't get three to come together to do one reception.
Wait a minute, now say that again.
They couldn't get three black barbecue folks, if you want to call them that, because they weren't even caterers at that time. They had their own little stands. Couldn't get three of them to come together to produce enough to handle one NFL reception because of the number of people and the volume that was involved.
And see, this is what we're going to be preaching as we continue on this year is how do we come together in excellence to do well? I did some security training this past weekend, and I went into the security building with my team, right? And I saw 4 companies occupying one space, working collaboratively, and they literally had tons of business because they said, you know what? Individually, we're good, but collectively, we're great because everything that we need from FBI training to CPR is all housed here. So when you come, we become a one-stop shop. So as we began to move forward with young people, elder people, and stuff like that, the call out is that if you don't want to work collaboratively, because we need each other, if you don't want to work collaboratively, then again, we're not going to hold on to try to pull you along. We're going to look for people that want to come along.
Well, let's narrow that down and laser it a little bit more, okay? Back in 1984-85, Cliff Graves was the chief administrative officer for San Diego County, his first black CAO. And he came to San Diego from the Office of Management and Budget, so he understood money. And he did well, had some issues, he left. He went on to make a fortune dealing in bonds and securities and still doing well as far as I know. And all we had at the time was Leon Williams as the one supervisor. Today we have a black CAO, a female who was the chief financial officer that came up through the ranks. We have a black woman on the board of supervisors. We have a black deputy there who is supposedly over the human relations and what would have been the DEI, and we don't know where all of that is. And then we have now, which we never had before, a black man as a general counsel for the county of San Diego. All right? And
Yeah,
so
chief probation officer.
a black probation officer, we had that before, was Cecil Stepp, so that wasn't new.
Okay.
And Cecil was not only probation, but after that he became director of Health and Human Services. So, but he was a professional administrator. But we have so many people of color right now in positions, all right? And we have a sister who's a very sharp attorney on the Port Authority, and she's the second one there because Pat McQuater, who worked for Solar Turbines, sharp attorney for them, a member of the Port many years, did phenomenal work, highly respected throughout everything that she did. So what's different today? Today, we're in a situation where we've had at least two black city managers, and every time we had them, before we switched over to a strong mayor form of government, it did not go well for black folks because for some reason, black people who get in major positions, and this was a flaw that Obama had, they seem to be afraid to help other black folks for fear they're going to be accused of favoritism.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in on this one,
Oh,
Dr.
please.
Warren, because, see, that's the thing that I struggle with, is that we work hard, we get into position, and it seems like we're the only people that when we get into position, all of a sudden we want to be fair. We gotta give everybody an opportunity, but everybody else are not fair. When they get in position, they crack open that door. They make sure that everybody in their little lineage gets through. Look at Park and Rec.
Yeah, but let's stick with that point you made right now because that's a very important key. We're not saying that you got to let folks in just because they look like you. We're saying that there are black people who look like you, who are qualified and capable, who would not have an opportunity to compete if it wasn't for you being there to guarantee that they have an equal chance. That's where the key problem is because we're afraid. Now, let's take the presidency and make it a good example. Obama, through 2 terms, never had a black press secretary. All right? Never, as far as I know, had a black secretary of labor. The Jimmy Carter had one. As you look back, the blacks held key positions in those administrations. George Bush, he had what? Both of the Bushes had Colin Powell, Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, and I know it sounds personal, but my ex-wife was the assistant secretary in Bush Senior, both of his terms. In one time at HUD and another at the Department of Defense, and Biden just had a very sharp and able sister as his press secretary, who stood up and spoke clearly. But we are afraid to do that. And that's a flaw. Now, I'm making this point because let's bring it on down to the community. Now we have the chamber that's bought a building in the neighborhood. So I'm sure they got the building in part because of the BID and the community. Well, that was the same mentality that created the Southeast Economic Development Corporation as the, let us call it the inner city counterpart to CCDC, Central City Development, which was the white folks development entity that rebuilt downtown, Horton Plaza, and all of those things that came with that, okay? But if we're going to give this business to these people, then where is the community connection going to be? Because so far, the track record of the Black Chamber is, even when they do their annual selection of who's important, they don't run anything in the Voice of Viewpoint or with GOD Radio or Mandy. They put all their business in the Business Journal. And the Business Journal never has anybody of color in it unless it comes through the chamber. So are you competing with the greater chamber in terms of what's happening? Because the greater chamber is not on record supporting the black chamber. And where's the community?
Well, let me say this. One of the things that always concerns me is that when we as people of color get into positions, instead of us being helpful to make sure that the door is open for all of us, what happens is that many times we become the block.
Yes, we do.
We block. Well, that one's not for you, or well, you don't really want that responsibility. And the question comes in: when do we stop blocking for fear that if someone gets close to me, they might be me? And so there's so many times that you have qualified candidates that look just like you, and instead of you saying, "Look, I feel strongly about that," oh, well, I don't want to put my opinion in because I don't want to sway. But everybody else, no matter what other ethnic group they are, they will stand up for their people. Now, here, when we look at going on in the community and what is really happening in the community, we have to ask ourselves, the question is, Do people, because everybody's like, well, do you live in the community? My whole thing is that there are a lot of people that don't live in the community, but do more in the community than the community people that live there. So,
Of course they do. But you know, when you were talking, God rest his soul, the late Dan McAllister, who was our treasurer, who was a very sharp financial person and did things well those 20 some years he was at the county. I remember when Dan first took that position, talking with him, and he went into his office. And what did he see in his office? Everybody in his office was either Vietnamese or Filipino. And this was not a racial slur against either group of people, because we know the Filipinos had special hiring preferences because when they closed Scubic Bay in the Philippines, they allowed a lot of them to come here almost like veteran preferential status. Mm-hmm. And when jobs opened up, since they had worked for the government and the Defense Department and folks in the Philippines, then they were given some first cracks at jobs. So they ended up in places like the Postal Service, the VA, and the county. Well, in the county offices down there, you know, you can't put your finger on it and say what people are guilty of, but isn't it coincidence that there are so many people that look alike working in places, all right, because they find ways to get folks in. And I'll show you how well this thing works. Years ago, when I had first took the Voice of Viewpoint, I hired a young lady from the Philippines because when we took the paper, we didn't even have an accounting system. We just had a Rolodex with some cards in it. Mm-hmm. And we were trying to figure out what on earth, you know, who owes us, how, whatever, the whole thing. So I hired this young lady who we were just getting into computers, was about the business of loading the stuff into a computer program, all right? But she was pregnant, and she was about to have a child, and she didn't have insurance. She hadn't been here that long. Do you know what she did? She came to me and said, while I'm out on maternity, I want my sister to take my place and do my job for me, okay? And so when she went out on maternity, we had to pull some strings so that she got the maternity, the care that she needed in terms of maternity. But then another relative came, and pretty soon we had 4 or 5 people. They all had skills, but the people who worked there were looking at jobs that needed to be done, and they would come to the owner and say, this is a job area now that we need to move into, and I have somebody that can do it.
Exactly.
So they were looking out for each other. Mm-hmm. It's almost like what happened with Moses when his sister followed the basket down the river, and they took the baby out, and the sister came out and said, I know somebody that can nursemaid it for you, and which was going to be the mother of the child, okay? And so we're not thinking that way again.
Yeah, and one of the things about it, and since this is Black History Month, you know, we really need to go back and let's talk about some civil rights movement.
Oh, yeah.
You know, let's talk about Martin Luther King. Let's talk about the whole movement. And for some reason, for some crazy reason, they really truly believe that everybody was on the same boat and everybody just agreed. They held hands and they got kumbaya and everything else of that nature. And nobody ever had a harsh word for anybody. Here's the thing that I'm saying to us as African Americans. We got to stop wearing our feelings on our shoulders. And if we have issues with one another, deal with them. And watch this. Deal with them in reality, but don't let it stop us from forward progress. Dr. Warren, I had a client one time. 2 men, 2 white men. They had a company. They needed some consultancy.
Okay.
I said, sure. Great contract for me. I'm all excited. I come in there with my little suit on, my briefcase, ready to do the work. And I literally walked in to these 2 white guys, literally in a full-out brawl fight. Now, I put my black thinking hat on. This deal is over. Yeah. This business is over, because when they told me what they were fighting about, the people told me why they weren't jumping in. I said, oh, this business is over. So I took my briefcase and my little suit, got back in my car, and went back to my office. 3 days later, I get a call from the 2 white guys. And they're like, where have you been? We had a meeting. We have you on contract. Where have you been? I said, hey, I came to your office. Y'all was brawling. And they said, well, we need to meet. I went there. One was sitting on one side of the table, all the way at the end. The other one was sitting on the other side. They both was bandaged up. One had a broken nose. One had a broken hand, and everything else of that nature. I'm looking at them, and the guy looked at me straight up, and he said, look, we don't like each other because I caught him with my wife, and I did this and everything. We don't like each other, but we ain't going to let it destroy this business. Now, fast forward to today. Multi-million-dollar company. The two men are still partners, different wives, and everything, but they didn't let it hurt the business.
No.
But if it would have been a black-owned business, it would have been shut down.
Well, that's why the mafia always said the expression is not personal, just business, but it came out the same way in terms of the results.
And what I was saying is simply is, even when we disagree, even when we have hurt feelings, we cannot let it stop us from moving forth and doing business. I might not say it the way you want me to say it. Dr. Warren, there have been many a times that Dr. Warren has chewed me a new behind and everything like that. And I say this to people because they need to know this. But that's, I always tell people that the bark is worse than the bite. Because normally the frustration thing that you might have is because you might think, I already should know it, or it's just that day, and it'll be an hour later. Everybody say, well, an hour later, you call me up. You know what? I thought about it. You know what I'm saying? But so many people can't get past the bark with the older generation or even the younger generation that they stop and not realizing that that's all the process of are you ready for the big game? Because when you go outside into real corporate world, they say some real foul stuff to you because they feel like they're paying you to take it. And so we have to take that same energy when we deal with each other. And if we don't like it, don't just take your toys and go home. Go back and find out what the bark is all about.
There you go. But when you mentioned the civil rights thing, and of course we are all observing the passing of Jesse Jackson, but I've been in so many situations with Jesse Jackson and the members of the Big Six in those early days where people were fighting. Everybody wasn't enthused with Jesse, because Jesse did a lot of stuff that pissed people off. But the struggle was bigger than the incident.
So who was the Big Six? Because everybody said the Big Six.
Yeah, well, the Big Six, you had, in those days, you had representatives of the Urban League, the NAACP, CORE, and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and there were two others. They called them the Big Six when they first started, and there was these arguments with them. And one of the problems that Adam Clayton Powell had was that he had been there since the 40s in Congress when these people were still in their playpens, and now they're planning a struggle, and he's done all the legwork, but they want to leave him out of the picture.
Exactly.
Okay. He wasn't invited to speak at the March on Washington. Okay. And if anything, he was the godfather of the stuff because he was the one speaking up when the rest of them didn't know where Capitol Hill was. But we have that tendency, and then we go through this now in San Diego. We got people coming here who think that San Diego stops at the 8. If you come south, you come to 8, and beyond 8 is a ghetto, and you don't have to worry about it. And so companies bring people and put them north of 8, and they think they have arrived. Okay, but they don't know that south of 8 is the life that made it possible for them to live north of 8. They missed that, okay?
Yeah.
And so we have these issues. Now, I don't want us to do all our time with them because I want to mention something that's very important that's happened this week. This week, we saw the city council vote to give millions of dollars to insurance companies to reimburse them and to reach a settlement over monies they put out for the 2024 flood. I don't understand how we can come to a settlement and have money for insurance company city council, but we still got people that don't have their homes, that haven't been addressed, that nothing has been done on a substantive basis to make them whole. One lady I saw in the news, she lost her house, she's living in a trailer, people lost everything they had, and there was some help given out, but a lot of the money came with the kind of strings and restrictions that made it almost impossible for people to take advantage of what was going on. And we should have been as a priority, making sure that we did something for all these families. How do we give the insurance companies money before we address the people who live here, who pay taxes, who vote? That's the problem for me. I have a real problem with that.
My question is, where's the money coming from if we have this big shortfall?
Yeah, there always seems to be money somewhere for something, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I don't know.
and even if you structure it over years, that means that if we already had a big shortfall, now we're going to structure paying the insurance company back over years. That means that every year we're going into it with another big a big shortfall. You know what I'm saying? And then the residents of the cities, the taxpayers of the city, the ones that are still not made whole, are seeing you paying out millions and millions of dollars, and yet they're still struggling. There's something wrong with that.
Well, there's a lot wrong with it. And then let's look at it. And I want to make a note. I see where one person calling in mentioned Fred Shuttlesworth having recruited Dr. King in terms of the struggle. And Shuttlesworth did a great deal. He was a giant in terms of the movement. And there were a number of giants that came out of this whole thing. OIC was there. Leon Sullivan, all of these people that they're long gone, and history will not remember some of them. But these are important folks who gave their life and their blood and their commitment, but they also gave their politics to the struggle. So that's what made it difficult. The politics are always going to be there. I don't want anyone to look back at Black history and think that what we achieved was without the politics in the struggle. Let us not forget that, who was it, Booker T. Washington, and who did he have a great debate with? I can't remember.
W.E. Du Bois?
W.E. Du Bois. I mean, the two great men that had a difference of opinion on how to handle a situation and which way we should go. One's talking about you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and the other one's saying you got to have some boots before you can pull up on straps. Mm-hmm. Okay? The debate is good, it's healthy. And one of my biggest frustrations today with us, and you and I do Black men and women every week in terms of a conversation. My biggest concern is when we start talking about what we're confronted with and what we need to do, that people just get silent. And I don't understand that. I mean, unless you're in a coma, if you're hearing information, you got to have an attitude or an opinion about something. You just can't sit and be a spectator through everything. And because that silence gives consent to what's being done.
And I think that, when we say, you might say, well, how do you not be silent? Some people protest and they march. Some people write letters and write commentary to express their opinion. Some of you guys use your social media to express your opinion, but then not just expression of your opinion, it is literally engaging in the fight. A lot of times we can talk a lot, you know what I'm saying? And that's why I say I never want anybody on my team. If I got to go to battle, I don't want a whole bunch of talkers. I want them quiet people that don't say nothing. But when it comes to put the work in,
well, you need a combination.
Yeah.
You need a combination of people. One of my faults with the West Coast, and Joan Kroc understood this when she built the Center for Peace and Justice at USD, and she built several of them. I think about 3 or 4 around the country, because on the East Coast, people get together after 5. Mm-hmm. They get together and they have discussions about social issues. When I was in the Institute of Public Management in D.C. years ago, while I headed up a center on social insurance and income security, there were times at least about once a month that in the evenings we flew up to Harvard and we met with dinner meetings with people who were on the outs of the administration because the Republicans were in control, the Democrats were regrouping, and we planned manpower, we planned labor, we planned what we were going to do when we got back in. This is the same thing that Trump did with the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah.
That's not new. He did it in 2016. They did the plan and he followed it. And then they did this 2025 plan, which really took off. Mm-hmm. And so people are planning, but the victims, the poor people at the bottom, they're never in on the planning because the idea is to keep them so busy that they don't have time to plan. Then one of the things Trump said last night, he was talking about how, well, you don't have to pay taxes on your tips. And so that's a good thing. And so people on tips, they clapping. But come on, y'all, let's look at the tip game, okay? While you trying to placate people to get tips, you're working twice as hard and maybe for less, and maybe you're going to skate on 50 cents while the millionaires out there making billions, and you are too tired to sit down to think and do anything. That's the plan. That's the plan. Keep you busy. Look at when we went into countries of colonialism, like when they went into India and Africa. What do they do? If you watch one of their movies, the white folks are walking along and they got all the natives carrying all the luggage, and in the evening time they got to sit up a house, they got to sit up the tent and the tablecloth and the silverware and the fire and everything, just like they're at home, and they're working them for pennies because they're controlling the economy. And that's why when South Africa was getting its freedom, Mandela knew that he could not get rid of de Klerk right away, because if he had, the financial institutions which were run by the Afrikaners would have collapsed in the whole country. So we need to understand how this stuff works. And if we start paying attention, we have no excuse today. We have more information than we ever had. We have more freedom than we ever had. Our only problem is that instead of the chains being on our ankles, the ball and chains are on our heads.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's controlling our mind processes and how we go about things. And literally, we feel and that we have to placate to be accepted, whereas I'm looking for people to be unapologetically Christian, unapologetically African American, or unapologetically black, and then also not have the fear. If I look at I remember we were talking about mentorship, and I said, Dr. Warren, I want you to be my mentor. Years and years ago, Dr. Warren said, I don't have no time to be doing no mentorship for you. But what he was really saying, and if you had to listen, and I tell us that we always have to listen, his attitude was, if you want to be mentored, be in the game. If you want to be mentored, be around. If you want to be mentored, be engaged. You will learn more by carrying somebody's briefcase and being in meetings that you are not even privy to because you served and you were there, and that's where mentorship comes in. A lot of people think that mentorship is a program.
Oh, yeah, they think that you're going to walk and carry them. You know, it's so interesting you use that example, because when I went to work for Adam Clayton Powell at 17 and I met him, I did not like this man. I told you, I just disliked him, and he did not do the things for me that he could have done. He didn't pay me the way he should have been. I thought he was abusive of my time and many of the things I had to do for him. But then when I look back at over the years, I look at how much I was learning and didn't know I was learning, okay? And, I mean, I grew up in the city in apartments. I didn't know anything about a fireplace. I remember when he taught me how to build a fire in a fireplace. I remember when he taught me how to cook stroganoff in a pressure cooker and how to, pour some red wine in it, and how to do cabbage and pour some beer in it, and how to cook, ham hocks and greens and stuff. And so many times I didn't want to be bothered. But at the same time, I'm learning. And I'm hearing, and then I'm sitting in meetings with key people discussing things, just like you did with those pastors when you gave up your seat, you see. And that's how we learn. But I guess for this generation today, we have to put it in this context. If your mind is a new computer, your hard drive is no good unless you put something on it. Now they can understand that, because we have generation now that it makes a decision when it hears something as to whether or not it has value. They don't realize that everything you hear has a value. All you have to do is hold on to it and let it come together. That's why, Leonard, years ago, before the internet, it was interesting that working black people who read their paper every day religiously understood so much about what was going on, and you wouldn't even think they knew or cared. Okay? I remember when I was an elected official, my mother used to call me every time somebody died. She would say, you know, this person died and this person. So I said, Mom, here. I bought her a box of cards and stamps. And I said, okay, you can send this for me to the family because I don't remember these people. Well,
Mm-hmm.
don't you know so and so? Didn't you know so and so? No, but people remember you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so that's what we are building goodwill for our children.
Yeah.
Okay? And when I ran for office and I knocked on the door, and some people would say to me, you know what, I don't know you, but I know your parents. So I'm
Exactly.
going to support you. That same thing happened to my daughter Chida when she was running for city council. She can tell you how many times she knocked on doors before she could finish saying her name. People say, oh, I know your mom and dad. I know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not trying to build. And this generation is going to be in trouble when it gets older, Leonard, because it's being so isolated with the internet and the cell phone that it's not bothering to have a human contact
Yeah.
that's going to lead to being something other than another depressed individual looking for a fix in terms of how am I going to make it.
And,
Ooh,
and one of the things, Dr. Warren, I think that's really beautiful. This is because it's Black History Month. I had a mentor in the likes of Myrtle Fawcett when I first went into San Diego Unified School District.
okay.
Myrtle was a traditional Southern woman, always had the makeup, the hair, the whole 9 yards. And I remember going into her office my first day, and she looked at me and she said, Leonard, I want you to know that several of the other principals wanted you, but I'm senior, so I got what I wanted. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, so let's get this straight. She said, in the office, you can say whatever you want to say. But when we go outside, we need to be a unified front. And, very proper Black woman, everything. And I said, well, yes, Miss Fawcett, as long as we can agree that we're going to agree together. And she would come back in and she would say stuff like, now, you have 3 years to ask for forgiveness and don't ask for permission. So we're going to do some things at this school to change it around for the betterment of our community. And every time that you do it, I can't do it because I know better. But when you do it, you can ask for forgiveness because you're new. And she had a whole strategy.
Yep.
But this is what she did. She said, you're going to do great things in this community, in this city. So everywhere I go, you're going to go. Every principal meeting, you're going to go, even though you're not supposed to even be there.
I'm going to take you.
I'm going to take you so you can learn. She taught me budgets. She taught me management. And even when she went off, she said, okay, you're going to run the school while I'm all on sick leave. I'll be back and we'll talk. These are the kind of mentorship opportunities that we are now trying to do with the next generation.
Oh, but see, Leonard, what you're saying is so crucial because most of us can't get there because we're too busy worrying about what we're going to get in advance before we even get started. Mm-hmm. Now, what you just said, the last part is so important. When I was an elected official in D.C., I had a young man who I put on retainer as my attorney because I was always getting into difficulty, always having problems, okay? But when I became a lawyer and I finished law school, I went to this person and I said, I want to work for you for free. And he said, what? I said, I want you to work me like a Hebrew slave for free. I want you to work me as if you were paying me more money than you make. And he said, what? I said, because I want to learn. And I'm only going to learn if I do that, if I get in the trenches and roll up my sleeves. And that's what I did. So by the time I came here to clerk for the county and for the city, I knew stuff that I wouldn't have known otherwise because of the mentality that I had that learn, learn, learn. Adam Powell used to say, in opposition to Stokely Carmichael, who was always hollering, burn, baby, burn, Adam would say, learn, baby, learn, because we never stop learning. And I remember telling some young people at a graduation one time, and it was kind of a spontaneous thing because I wasn't even supposed to be the speaker. The mayor was, and he didn't show. I had 5,000 people sitting in the audience, and the superintendent says to me while they're singing a song, you're going to have to give the inaugural address, the commencement address. And I said, here's the one thing I want you to understand, that if you learn how to learn, you will be successful in life because the jobs that are going to come to you have not been created yet. But if you learn how to learn, you will learn each job as you go, and you can be successful. I've had 12 careers, but I had to learn along the way. But today, we got people who are so limited in their focus that they just want to see to the next thing. Well, what am I going to be next month, or what am I going to get next week, or wherever? And that is the antithesis of the history that brought us this far. Because think of the slaves. These people didn't see their positions getting better, but they knew life was going to be better, and they believed it was going to be one day if it wasn't in their lifetime. And so each one they got a chance to do something, did it on behalf of the whole and not just for themselves. As opposed to today, we so busy focusing on ourselves as individuals that we're missing out on the value of collective effort.
And here's the thing, and I don't want anybody to walk away and think that this is a conversation of what we're not. This is the encouragement of what we are and what we can be.
Yes.
Because Dr. DeWarren, a lot of the inventions that we have today was to make life easier.
Right.
You feel what I'm saying? It wasn't to make us not, just want to get polyester so we don't have to iron. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't about, just having air conditioning on for that, but for refrigerator systems so we don't have to get blocks of ice. It was to make life easier. But when we understand the creativity we as African Americans have, and then the ability to build, because we never build in isolation.
We're builders.
We always build together.
Yes.
And even like it's like, you go in and you look at stuff and you say, okay, look, iron sharpens iron. Now, Dr. Warren, you are a bevy and a wealth of knowledge. And you have all of this knowledge. You know what I'm saying? But then if you then got 4 strong bulls, if you will, you know what I'm saying, that will say, okay, Doc, you throw the knowledge out, we're going to plow the way, and together we're going to all eat. The biggest thing that we see consistently is that a lot of people just want to be individuals. It's us 4 and no more, and not realizing that when you come to the table, if you got beef, and I got some carrots and some celery, and somebody got some onions,
we can make a stew.
We can make a stew, and everybody eats.
But look, Dr. Thompson, on that point, before the pandemic, remember, because Black Men United had been around for now some 20 years, and then Black men and women. And I remember when we tried to bring the younger generation in, and they didn't want to hear any history. They didn't want to hear about yesterday, or what are we going to do now? Well, how can you do anything before you know what was done before you got here? Let's go walk now. Well, how can you know where to walk if you don't know where the path is? Or if you're going to make a path, do you know where you're making a path to? And all of this gets to be important. But we're in a hurry to do stuff. I watch people in this town drive. Everybody's in such a hurry. And I'm wondering, have I gotten slower now because I'm older and I'm more appreciative of movement and I'm not in a hurry, and I do, but does rushing come with youth? It appears to. I mean, you do a drive-through to order a sandwich and you got to tell them 5 times to repeat what they're saying because they're talking so fast they don't care about what's happening, not listening, and yet you have to be able to listen to get to where you're going. And so these are the things that the end result of this discussion, folks, is that Black history does not end on Saturday the 28th. Black history is ongoing. Every week it's in the Voice and Viewpoint. This week the back page is the Black National Anthem. I print it all through the year because you got to learn the words. If you don't know Stonely the Road We Trod, Bit of the Chasing Rod, and you don't know all that, it's embarrassing when we have an event and that's on a program and every Black person in the audience has got to reach for a piece of paper to fumble and mumble through the words because you ain't bothered to learn the words.
No, Dr. Warren. No, Dr. Warren, don't do that. What's embarrassing is when the people that don't look like us know the song
words.
And we don't know the words. That's the embarrassing point.
It is.
And so here's the thing, and I want to leave you all with this concept. It's a concept of reciprocal teaching and dual learning. While you are being taught by us, you are teaching us. And while you are learning from us, we are learning from you.
Yes.
And you see that when you see that grandmother sitting with the 5-year-old, and the 5-year-old is teaching her how to text and use her cell phone, but she's the baby, she's the elder. Everybody has something to put to the table if you're willing. And watch this, if you're willing to sit together. And I will say this, Dr. Warren, one of the most beautiful things I've ever saw was our great grandmother, our grandmother, and she was sitting with my granddaughter, who is her great-great-granddaughter, 4 years old, sitting at the dining room table because they have a standing date every Thursday. And grandma will be sitting up there drinking her black coffee, and Amari would sit there eating her lunch, and they were having conversations as if they were in the same age range.
Yep.
And grandma would say, oh, I can't wait for her to come over because she actually knows what she's talking about.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing about it is that grandma poured so much into Amari that now Amari's vision and the way she sees life is different because she's been exposed to the old and the young, and she was being taught. And
But see, the grandma, the old knows that what they're passing out is going to make a difference later.
Mm-hmm.
And they got the patience to make it go that way. See, that's the key. And that's so important what you're saying, because we kind of switch roles. I carried my son with me from the time he was 3 to everything I did every weekend, paper, repairs, whatever, people stopping, meeting me, and he would say, Dad, is that a friend of yours? I said, no, son. That person's not a friend. They're an acquaintance or an associate, and I'm telling him the difference. Today, at 38 years old, my son is teaching me, because when I get upset about stuff, here he comes like Godfather wisdom. Well, Dad, there's another side to this. And I'm listening, and I'm astounded at the reasoning and the wisdom. And I said, that's something. And then he will say to me, well, I was listening all that time. Well, I don't remember the stuff that I said, but they are watching you to see what you do and how you do it, and then they are taking it in. And so this is what we have to remember, that we're always in a teaching mode. And sometimes I get anxious, and I have to catch myself, because I can fly off the handle, and what I say can negatively impact someone who is looking for some direction or support. So many times I have people come to me and say, I learned so-and-so from you way back when, and you said, I don't remember what you're talking about. But if it worked, then it worked, Yeah. So we're going to keep going, folks. This doesn't end on Saturday. And the one thing I want to say before we leave here is, Saturday is no King's Day. Throughout this nation, millions of people are going to be marching in opposition to Donald Trump, his administration, and all the stuff he's doing. I am encouraging black folks for a change to be a part of that march, number one. And I'm encouraging those millions of people to not only march, but make sure they are registered to vote next November, so that whatever game they have to try to overturn the election will not work, because the vote will be greater than their ability to undermine it. This is how we get out of this fix, because this too shall come to pass. And the only question is, will you come to pass with it?
And Dr. Warren, I like to give you kudos on the front page of the newspaper, where you had Miss Margaret Terrell.
Yes.
And Receiving Award, this woman in her 90s. And she said, and I remember being heard that she said, well, do I have to speak? And they said, oh, no, you don't have to speak. Well, somebody speak for me. But then when she got up there, that 90-plus got up there and got on the mic. But when she put her hands on her sanctified hips, then all of a sudden the wisdom came out. Yeah. And it was so beautiful to see her being honored for the work. We have to learn, and this is what, from young to old, to honor the achievements as they go up. Dr. Warren, I received so many different awards coming up the ladder through church and everything else. But my biggest rewards were the elders that would come back to me and say, represent us, go forth.
Yeah.
And I almost get misty because when we would go places, we would go with the representation of our elders.
Yeah.
And so we want to encourage people as you begin to look and grow, understand that it's not just about you, but it's what came before you.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we have to have the patience. And that's why when you talk about your son, he's 38 now, has the patience to say, hold on, Dad. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the biggest things I think we have to work on now is the patience to be able to hear. Because, Dr. Warren, I don't like texting. I'm old-fashioned. I want you to pick up the telephone and let's talk.
Yes.
I text out of necessity to communicate.
And you'd be surprised at 4 a.m. in the morning you send a text and you get an answer right away.
Yes.
I want Sister Ashley to know we are going to report back next week what happened. And I also want you to know that upside down cake was kicked in. Oh,
that
man.
pound cake, yeah.
That pound cake was so good. I'm telling you, you could be diabetic and eat that pound cake and it won't even move your sugar. And so it was something else. It really was.
Yeah. Doc,
so,
we're so excited. We this month we celebrated the gala. The gala was such a big success, and that talk back.
yes.
That talk back with you and Freeway Rick Ross is this phenomenal. I think that there's a formula that God has given us to move forth there. He has given us additional ideas to really be a blessing to the community, and we're just looking forward to it. I think that in this season, we must celebrate the Black press. We must celebrate the print, and we can never, ever go away from it because it was the print that brought us thus far.
But not only if we're going to celebrate it, Brother Thompson, we need to make sure that the people that we're spending our $2 trillion a year with
$2 trillion
are doing business with our few businesses. Right now, we are the oldest Black business, for-profit business in San Diego, as far as I know, the Voice and Viewpoint. Because Ragsdale Head is beat and they're gone, and everybody else is new. And here we go, spending. George Stevens used to clock how many millions we were taking out of this community, but we're not making any demands. We don't make any demands of Jack in the Box, McDonald's, Popeyes, Burger King. None of these people are doing anything. And Food Maker owns Jack in the Box and Del Taco and all of this stuff, and we stand in line over there on Euclid and Federal Boulevard, where they have rebuilt the place, and it's like going back into the 50s. You can't go inside to eat. You got to walk up. Really? Yeah, we had to walk up when we were in the segregated South. Are we still accepting that today? And my last comment, folks, as tight as money is today, we can make a difference if we start changing our habits. There's no reason we should still be at Popeyes, KFC, McDonald's, Jack in the Box, and all of these places, and even Denny's now, that's charging $5 for a glass of milk, $5 for a cup of coffee. Let's go back home like we used to and take those dollars, and instead of having one meal for the amount of money we're spending at some fast food unhealthy joint, go home and plan a meal so we can eat it with family and we can have some money left over. So let's plan it. This is Lent season. Let's restructure our eating habits during this period. You don't have to give up everything for Lent, but maybe you can give up some fast food and make a plan to eat at home. Maybe you don't have to be a Muslim for Ramadan, but maybe you can get up in the morning and have a bowl of oatmeal and decide that you're going to eat again later at the end of the day. You don't have to be spiritual to do it, but you can save some money. And don't you know, if we close our wallets, it will make a difference. Let's stop talking about boycotting Target and stay out of Target and Marshalls and all the rest of them. And when they see their bottom line fall, oh, look at what we're spending. How much money do we waste on soft drinks? PepsiCo owns Pepsi, owns Pizza Hut, owns Taco Bell, okay? Owns Frito-Lays, okay? And they own Minute Maid, which they're getting ready to sell or discontinue. And all we do is just pouring our dollars into these folks, eating unhealthy, and then wondering why we're sick and we can't afford to go to the doctor anymore with what's going on. So let's just pay attention, folks. Let's just start asking, when you go to spend that money, you run into 7-Eleven, do you really need that $4 Slurpee? Do you really need that $3 candy bar? Do you really need that $5 bag of chips that used to be $1? And do you see anybody working at the counter in any of those places that look like you? If you don't, it's because you don't demand it. We don't go boycotting them. All we do is just say, you know what, we'll be back when things change.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to do.
So, ending off with this, Dr. Warren, instead of getting a whole bunch of fast food, go get you some slow food and be healthy.
There you go. Go cook. Go home and fix something. Yeah. You know, we used to get a can of hamburger helpers, right? And we know how to get a crock pot and cook some beans. Healthier for you in terms of protein anyhow than all that junk that you're eating. So let's do something. If we're going to spend, let's benefit each other in terms of what we spend. You don't need to be going into some barbecue joint to get a rib sandwich and they're going to give you 3 ribs for $6 and you didn't even get a taste on the bones. Come on.
Yeah. So with that being said, this is from the desk of the editor. Now listen, young people, listen, y'all. Let us know topics that you want. We will invite you on to be a part of this discussion. We are going to be doing some really amazing things from the desk of the editor. So stay tuned. Get your voice and viewpoint. Continue to tune in. If God say the same, we'll be right back here next week on Wednesday. Y'all be blessed.
Be blessed.